Amen. All righty. Magnimas teresas kausuatul de Blesco in Daniel chapter 1. And this message is really dedicated to Ternenge. This week is really dedicated Vipo Instagram, Soprichos, Ibian de Kangiri. I really have a concern with Ternenge because Kovli Lebut. And I think a lot of it has to do with, we're all out of our routine. We're all out of our church commitments. And so Sagada Shonka Chisamas and the Kangiri really took a toll on a lot of young men. And so I've been reading in the Word, Sarsi kan kerdi l'Eterne Zurale. Sarsi kan kerdi l'Eterne ande pungende. And I want to go to the book of Daniel, chapter 1, verse 1. And we're going to read a few verses, chunk it out to Melungo, because we promised the church that we're not going to have long services at all. Daniel chapter 1, verse 1. Penelgadiah, the third year of the reign of Jehoiakim, king of Judah, Nebuchadnezzar, king of Babylon, came to Jerusalem and besieged it. That means Nebuchadnezzar, a pagan king, he's not a king that worships God. He has his own God. And this pagan king from Babylon, Nebuchadnezzar, arreglando Jerusalem and besieged it. Oswanto besieged it means que todiape anglal kavudar le forosco echimekel konik tanklel iconic tedel. This is how the tactics were back in the day to keep the people inside. And so he did this. Verse 2, the Lord gave Jehoiakim, king of Judah, into his hand. Who? The Lord. The Bible penel que odel mismo, diacao imperator of Judah, and the vascator of Nebuchadnezzar. Why would God use a pagan, evil king that is an idolater? He worships his own God. Why would the real God allow this man to come in Jerusalem and take the king away? And not only that, but enter the temple and take all the utensils. Sale basuria, sale instruments, sasabolizas in the temple. He's allowed to take it. He burns it down. He tears everything down. And then, penel kaile sale terne, mangav sale terne. And dixo penel. Then the king ordered Ashpenaz, the chief of the officials, to bring in some of the sons of Israel, including some of the royal family and of the nobles, youths in whom was no defect, who were good looking, showing intelligence in every branch of wisdom, endowed with understanding and discerning knowledge, and who had the ability for serving in the king's court. And he ordered him to teach them the literature and language of the Chaldeans. So listen, the king of Babylon is entering Jerusalem. He entered, he got their king, he destroyed the temple, he robbed the temple first, he put all that stuff in the temple of his God, and then Liasale Ternen. And you know what happened? He didn't die. God didn't judge him. Why? Because actually God was judging his own people. Palalengo, disobedience. And for the next 70 years, Israel is captive in Babylon because of disobedience and idolatry and forsaking their God. God had patience, prophets, warning them of what was to come. They paid no attention to God. They began to worship other gods until God said, enough is enough. And in 605 BC, 605 years before Jesus, Nebuchadnezzar goes to Jerusalem and destroys it. And as he takes the young men, in that group of young men, there's a 14, 15-year-old young man. You know what's his name? Daniel. Daniel, in the Bible, he had three friends, Hananiah, Mishael, and Azariah. They took them, but they changed their names. In the Bible, that for Daniel, they put him the name Belteshazzar, to Hananiah, Shadrach, to Mishael, Meshach, and to Azariah, Abednego. Kadalasi letrin rakloge eterne, that were put in the fire, remember? And this is Daniel who was in the lion's den. This is the story of these 3 Hebrew teenagers that were taken captive by Nebuchadnezzar because of the disobedience of the land. But so talanautu que saca aqui a story, because in the midst of all the chaos, mascaral saca ko Cris que Jean pecataro dele, mascaral the temple being destroyed, the king being taken captive. Could you imagine Ogindo Katagala teenagers? What is going on? Kailo dele. How come God is allowing this king to destroy our temple? How come God is allowing this king to take our king captive? How come God is taking us away from our city, our temple, our religion, everything? And the only thing they remember was Kanajanas towards Babylon. They were looking back to the billow of smoke because of Nebuchadnezzar Diayak, o temple. So these teenagers, they came Pabardo, o temple de Deblisco. And smoke is all over the place. And I guarantee you the enemy was telling them this, what he always tells people in the midst of affliction and suffering, Kailo Tumarode. Where is your God? So all of this is happening. But verse 8, Penegadiam. But Daniel made up his mind that he would not defile himself. And that is all I want to tell you today. In the midst, in the midst of you not understanding nothing about this pandemic, why are some being healed and some not? Why uni pure sastion, uni terne meren? Why all of this is happening? In the midst of all this confusion, in the midst of all this chaos, you need to make up your mind that in the middle of a lot of things that you don't understand, you will still trust God. In the midst of all your pain, affliction, suffering, in the midst of all your confusion, in the midst of all your trouble, tu se Deus diz tu ando dele. The Bible tells Daniel made up his mind as a young teenager. You know what that word means? That he set his heart to believe that God is in control. He set his heart. He placed his heart on something firm. In the midst of all the smoke and chaos and confusion and judgment and going on our way now to Babylon, what? We're away from his family. Everything, his whole life is upside down. But he decided in his heart that he's going to not defile himself. I'm not going to get contaminated by these Babylonians. I'm not going to be contaminated. They took me away from my city. They changed my name. They're changing our language. They're doing all of this stuff. But whatever is outside and whatever is happening outside, I'm not going to let it come inside. I'm not going to get contaminated. That means I'm not going to defile myself, because even though they burned the temple of God, he was still protecting his temple. Because Kanamangle, they denles the wine and the meat from the king's table, he said, no, I will not allow you to come into this temple. Agadosi Sojan Pagis Pralami. Too many young men could not resist during this pandemic. The relationship with the Blesa is compromised. Borana Mariterne got defiled, contaminated, Rimosaile, Koblile, Ayunidina de Lumia, Sosta. Because their heart was not in a strong relationship with the Blesa. You see, the moment they didn't have church for 6 months, Bud Durile. Why? Because they were connected to the church and not so much to Christ. Because they were devoted to a position, not so much to the person of the Lord. Because there was no true prayer in their life. because there's no real study of the word in their life. Like aquella pandemic exposed who made up their mind to follow the Lord and who was connected only to a ministry and to a church and to gatherings. Pranale Odel Chakardiame, that was Numa committed to church and gatherings and this. Odela Kardiame that was Pangle Leste. So that when, even if all of this is removed, because it has been removed, we're only in here for an hour a week. And some are not even in here for an hour a month. And some even haven't come back since 6-7 months. So Pranali, God doesn't want us committed to a building and to some songs and you just sitting on that chair. Odel Mangela me committed listing to love Him. Amen. To know Him.
Hallelujah.
That's why Tribula me hugimos kere.
Yes, Lord.
That's why Tribula me oswatul de blesco.
Amen.
That's why I get on Instagram almost every night. You think it's fun for me? I don't like looking at a phone. I channel Chikunsi on the other side. I don't like it. But you know why I do it? Because some of you pay attention. Because some of you listen. And I have to say, not all of you. Because I see the names. I pray that after the live you see it. But I don't know. And that's what gets me nervous. Because and so I get on there to make sure that we make up for the time that we're not in church. That we make up at least for the time that you don't seek the Bible yourself. The reason the pastors tasame por Instagram is not so that we can be popular or famous. Trust me. We do it for you. So the next time your pastor goes live, do your best to toast him. If for some reason you couldn't get on the live, at least see it afterwards. Why? Because you need it. You need to be fed. Or else you are going to be a victim of all of this. There's something greater than the pandemic, and that is Kanadurios Katarodel. I sudrior que traio. I chimerodes Katarodel. O pandemic, Budmanud Naswailes hostile. And I'm not saying that it's no big deal. It's a big deal. But you know what's a bigger deal? That you go throughout your life and you never knew God. You was never really close to Him. And so I pray that just as Daniel made up his mind, en su acto español es capel, Daniel propuso en su corazón no contaminarse. That we would do the same thing. Make up your mind who you're going to serve. Make up your mind. What is it that you want to do with the Lord? Now my megle Christos as some, not so important person in your life. Jesus needs to be the most important person on the Mount Drive. More important than your wife, your father, your mother. More important than your husband, your children. More important than anybody. And the moment Christ is the most important person in your life, He'll give you the proper love for your father, your mother, your sister, your sons, your daughters. You see, kana tu bolile de bles o pral pasabovende, He doesn't rob from you the love that you need to have for your family. When you love God above your family, He'll give you the proper love for them. Odel tiame family, odel diame glati nepotsi. Why? To love them and to teach them to love God. And so I tell you all this, Dedento Mesor, especially l'Eternel, in the midst of all the confusion and chaos and temptations, make up your mind. Make up your mind, the quicker the better. Who you're going to serve. Who are you going to follow? Who is Jesus to you? Te você papo that you motiva the Gospel TV, papo on the home, and they visit him once a month. We're going to go see Grandpa. Kalkai Jesigu. Tonle pures on the home. Odel na ye papo que you just go see once a month. for a few minutes. O dahil naibari kong that we go see once a week for an hour. O dahil si kay trailan di amindi. If you are born again, God is here, not here. He's here. And wherever you go, the Holy Spirit inhabits you, indwells you. So have fellowship with Him. Speak to Him. And you want Him to speak to you? Read the Bible. Listen to your pastor on Instagram. You don't have to listen just to me. Choose another 2-3 pastors. Don't listen to too many. There's a lot of weird stuff going on. But listen to a few good preachers that just preach the truth and help you. Make up your mind. Set in your heart something. Those are internal. See, Daniel, no matter what was going on outside of him, inside of him, there was a decision made. We're all about the external. We're all about sarmias. It's not about that, it's about who we are. It's about the decisions that we make internally and the barilo. Amen.
Amen.
Hallelujah. Mangaste que todos me interesans que Senior de Bleski, Jonathan, forget to sing a song. Let us remember the Lord. Manglemas tuminda that if you're going to take a mola maho, that you would just take whatever. If there's 2-3 people in your family, one tavelagla, just ask your family who's going to take communion. But we're trying to avoid the pasos y cabreste. So as the Lord leads you, siuni communion cups in Kiapalal, siuni communion cups Katsiamglal. You're more than welcome at this time. The pasos, we're not giving them out like normally. So mangas to mean that if you're going to take communion, haidya kana lekili communion and take as many as you need for your group. Ask them who's taking it, and this is how we're doing it.